Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo. My co-host, Aaron Lujan, not with us today, celebrating his birthday with his family. However, millions of Americans and billions around the globe today woke up with the news that Pope Francis, at the age of 88, has passed away. The day after Easter, the day after J.D. Vance sat in the Vatican with Pope Francis. And with the death of Pope Francis comes speculation about where the church, or the Catholic Church, I should say, is heading. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And I know that with the passing of Pope Francis today and those mourning the loss of him, sometimes it is not necessarily the best timing to discuss the downfalls of the Pope and his decision-making through his tenure, his 12-year tenure and reign as Pope. But I think that it's very critical that at some point we do. And we will continue to talk about this. And we are going to look today at the front runners and the potentials of becoming the next Pope, who is most likely to become the next Pope, and what they will bring with them. But that being said, we've seen that the Catholic Church has started to head in a very progressive manner, a manner that is basically a flight away from what is biblical worldview, what is a biblical worldview. And I think that this matters from a large perspective because we have 1.4, 1.5 billion Catholics in the world that are looking to the Vatican to pave the way forward when it comes to issues like LGBTQ, same-sex marriage, abortion, climate change, divorce. These are all topics that have largely become a talking point, not only in our nation, but around the world, and now a heavy talking point when it comes to who should be the next pope and what is the direction of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church, under Pope Francis, has taken the viewpoint that instead of these hard-hitting truths that gay marriage, same-sex couples, yes, we should allow them into the doors of the church. Yes, we should reach them with the message of the gospel. But no, we should not stay quiet when it becomes, when we're talking about the sin that they're living in. That is a change to the direction of where the church is headed, where now they are not necessarily approving of same-sex marriage, but Pope Francis ushered in the blessing of each individual in the same-sex relationship, which is a huge change from previous past precedent set by the Catholic Church. And so you might be looking at this and going like, okay, I'm a non-Catholic Christian. What do I care about who the next pope is? Well, I think that this is a question in a situation where we should care, and the reason why is because we have over 1 billion people looking to the Pope for the direction of the Catholic Church to see what is right and what is wrong. And when the Catholic Church continues to stray from what is biblical truth, we end up with leaders in countries that start to justify sin as okay in the law of the land, which is what we've seen happen for a very long time in this country, and it will only continue to get worse. When we look at Polymarket, who is most likely to be the next pope, this is the current data at the time of this filming, so it may have changed, but leading the way, Pietro Parolin, with 36% chance of becoming the next pope, followed by Luis Antonio Tagle at 27%. Those two have been the supposed front runners for quite a while, dating back to the first information of Pope Francis's illness earlier in this year, when people started speculating who would be the next pope. those two have always been at the forefront. Pietro Parolin is the current Secretary of State for the Vatican, takes a more progressive tone, not nearly as progressive as Luis Antonio Tagle, who was pretty much the supposed predecessor of Pope Francis. It's who Pope Francis would have probably chosen had he have been able to choose the next pope. Definitely more progressive, could be significantly more progressive than Pope Francis. Pietro Parolin, probably a little less progressive than Luis Antonio Tagle, but probably still along the same lines of where we see Pope Francis and what Pope Francis had done. And so the likelihood of us returning in the papacy to a more conservative, traditional Catholic is slim to none, according to what we've seen come out in the news and the general talk of what the cardinals are probably looking at. Now, it could be interesting. There's a lot of opportunities for firsts, with Tagle being the potential to be the first Asian to take the chair as the Pope. Whereas with Pietro Parolin, you're getting a more traditional, like European man taking the office. And so if they're looking to continue to follow that trend of let's get in some new firsts, let's try to expand the church in different areas by changing the ethnicity of who takes the office as the Pope, as they did in kind of a political move to put Pope Francis in the first place. Pope Francis being the first Pope to come from Latin America, even though Latin America makes up 470 million Catholics and pretty much a large chunk of their base. And so many thought that the decision to put Pope Francis in office was really a political play to the Latin American continents and countries, that basically we understand that you want a larger role within the Catholic Church. Also, Pope Francis really bringing in that more progressive viewpoint and ideology, and moving away from the Latin masses that have been criticized by many of the cardinals on the progressive wing of the Catholic Church. So it's definitely interesting. I think that the decision of who the next pope is does have a pretty large importance when it comes to the direction of how Catholics and Christians view the world. I think that there are plenty of denominations within the Christian faith that look to the Pope and look to the Vatican for direction in terms of where the church is heading, which I think it's a very interesting time that we live in, where sin that is clearly laid out in the Bible as sin is being accepted amongst the church, both in the Protestant realm, in the evangelical realm, and the Catholic realm. We've seen churches that have just completely gone away from what is scriptural because those hard-hitting truths are uncomfortable and nobody wants to be called out on their sin. So it really truly is, I think, important what happens in these next 30 days. The search for the next pope, or the voting, the conclave, should begin sometime between 15 and 20 days from now, where we could see a new pope by the end of May, if not the middle of May. And so definitely some interesting times. I hope that you had a blessed Easter. We are going to be short today, but we will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with more news and more interesting dialogue. Aaron will be back, I promise. So if you come to watch this show just for Aaron, don't worry, he'll be there. Hopefully I bring a nice, enjoyable show for you anyways without Aaron, but we will be back at 3 p.m. Thank you. God bless. Have a blessed day.